Because I'll still take it up from where Chamberlain left off. I'm quite excited that you just hit it there, saying that they're poorly funded. But again, perhaps we should also know how much, maybe percentage-wise, we've been giving to those agencies, because this is just not the first time or the last we're likely to see. People have been sending in tweets saying that we're getting to see local canoes being used to ferry people across the floods. And you also recall the disaster we experienced at the Edo elections. It was also hired boats. How come the government, maybe the executive arm or governments even at state levels, they find it difficult to even procure canoes before we even talk about helicopters to lift people off dire situations?
Well, as I said, the frequency we begin to see these disasters makes that states, that local government, states and federal, we must reprioritize our allocation of resources. I think what we're seeing now means even at the state level, as you rightly said, state governments need to begin to provide more funding for these emergency situations. And those are the responsibilities of different governments to begin to say, look, these floodings are becoming very frequent, and as a state, there might not be the need for me to have boats available, but now, based on the challenges ahead, I have to. And at the federal government level too, is to say, look, NEMA of the 70s, of the 80s, or the 90s, and the challenges of today, we need to look inwards and provide resources for NEMA. So my own position is really we need to look forward and begin to see that we can run those agencies as we used to run in the past at all levels. And you are very right in your observation. And the states just have to, reprioritize some of their allocation of resources.
We've got this question, from Jerry. He wants to know, he says, there are lots of ecological experts who are jobless. He says, why is there no state-of-the-art ecological center? Or don't we need it?
Don't we? Well, I think we might need that, but it's to me, the challenge is presently now, even with what we have, is to, first of all, let us try and bring the issue of environment and ecology in the front burner. In a society where we're addressing poverty issues, issue of education, health, sometimes environmental issues are pushed to the back. And when you push to the back, it also means that when it comes to funding, you're also right there at the back. The question now is that the more the society is aware that the environmental issues are important, and then ecological experts too, there will be a need for them to play a role. I think the more, unfortunately, the more we have these kind of incidents, unfortunately, as I say, makes us begin to understand that we must make environment issues very, very important, and that's what we're talking about now when we talk about the funding of NEMA. Years gone by, NEMA would not have been out there as one of the agencies that can compete with other agencies for funding. But with what we've seen now, it speaks for itself to say, look, we got to really step NEMA up and provide more funding for it. So I think it's the challenges of today that will really begin to dictate how we address some of the things we used to do in the past.
Senator, while we're asking, for more funding, are we also going to be strengthening mechanism on asking the agencies to account for the funds that they have received in the past?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we in the Senate, for example, next week are hoping to meet with the Ministry of Environment to tell us what have they done in the 2012 budget implementation and all the agencies. And we intend to be therefore more accountable. In the past, it hasn't been. I mean, don't let us run away from that. And I agree with you that if we're going to provide more funding, especially in a sector that people have lost confidence in proper application of funds. I mean, that people generally, if you ask people, they believe that some of these funds in the environment sector for erosion, for flooding, are not properly utilized. So definitely in as much as we talk about funding, then those responsible to need to step up and ensure that funds are adequately utilized. The kind of the process by which contracts are awarded, the competence of the contractors, the supervision. We, in our own oversight function, are definitely going to ensure that every single naira that you see there is properly utilized. I can assure the Nigerian public from that point of view. What used to be done in the past, that would not happen under our own time, because definitely if we're asking for more funds in this sector, we must ensure that they're properly utilized. And it's a place in the past that people have been able to get away with doing things, because it's one of these sectors that, how do you, if you're talking about a road, everybody can go to a site and see, whether the road was constructed or not, or if you're talking about a hospital. And an environment, apart from those that really know the sector, the average Nigerian sometimes cannot be able to really put his finger down and say, oh, I can see how those funds of ours were utilized. So that has allowed in the past for there to be a lot of corruption and misapplication of funds. But definitely going forward, that there'll definitely be a change in that. And I think we have not missed the words at all in any way for people to understand that. The Ministry of Environment and his agencies.
I have just been corrected now that it's not an environment policy that was released by the Ministry of Environment. It was a policy on climate change. And I was wondering if the Senate committee or maybe the brother arm in the lower house was aware of this particular climate change policy.
Yes, no, we are aware of that. But don't forget also, when you talk about the climate change, there's a climate change commission bill that's already been passed that's waiting for the president's assent to that. The policies, as good as they are, as I keep on saying, is that the issues that needs to be addressed now is a more holistic legislative approach to some of these issues. We need to have a climate change commission that is given the responsibilities to look at the issues as some of the policies being driven by government. The ministry policies have been sent to us, but I think more important than that is let us sign the Climate Commission bill that's already been passed by the two houses, waiting on Mr. President's assent. I think that will help us in beginning to address some of these climate change issues. Even when we go for international conferences, one of the areas Nigeria is always taken about, we're one of the few countries that have not yet, got our climate commission established. And I think that really is the first priority in the area of trying to address climate change as against the policies being put forward by the Ministry of Environment.
All right, quickly if you can, this forecast is going to be on, we understand there should be rains, or we should expect rains until this November. What would you like to see, in addition to what you've seen, having gone around some of these areas in November? What would you like to see the ministries, the agencies put in place? And the second part of the question is, when will the bill on Nasra be through?
Well, what we need to see now is how can we have access to emergency funds that will be able to address some of these disasters that we're going to see in other parts. Hopefully we don't want to see disasters, but in case we see between now and end of November, we should be able to provide enough funding so that the response is quicker and is adequate. That is the first thing we need to address. And that is why in the Senate yesterday there was the idea that Mr. President should bring a supplementary. But despite that, I believe that federal government has plans, contingency plans by which they have access to funds that can address this kind of emergency issues. That's one. On issue of Nasra, quickly, we're going to have a public hearing very soon, and we have a mandate that in 4 weeks we should come back to the Senate for third reading and hopefully be able to pass that amendment law at the Senate. And I think that would be a landmark legislation on this issue of oil spill management in the country.